you. Before we begin, for our online audience members, there will be many opportunities throughout this whole program for you to ask questions. You can do so in the comment section on YouTube, on Facebook, or if you're watching it on the rescuingourchildren.net website. And we encourage you to continue to put those in during any of the speakers' talks. On any questions you might have, we'll get to them. I now have the honor of introducing our first speaker, writer and director of the award-winning documentaries Agenda, Grinding America Down, and Agenda 2, Masters of Deceit. Curtis Bowers is here with us today to share his unique wisdom on the future of America. Mr. Bowers was an educator, restaurant owner, and a former Republican member of the Idaho House of Representatives. Curtis now dedicates his time to filmmaking and speaking across the country. Mr. Bowers has traveled the world with his wife and their 9 homeschooled children, singing and speaking to promote his outstanding films, which have impacted millions. If you have not watched his documentaries, I strongly encourage you to do so. He also speaks on the left's long war against God and the intentional promotion of socialist ideology in education, media, and churches. Without further ado, please welcome Curtis Bowers.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. I love when I have the opportunity to influence people in their relation to how they are going to raise the next generation, because the children are the future. We have been slow in understanding that, but evil people throughout history, Hitler, Stalin, Mao, they all knew that if you have the children, you have everything, and if you don't have the children, you have absolutely nothing. And so I appreciate you joining us, and I hope and pray that the things I have to say will be a blessing to you. They will help you to think about things in a different way than maybe you have in the past. There's an old saying, if you don't know where you're going, any train will get you there. And as I've traveled the country now for 10 years with my family, it seems like most people don't know where they're going. And so they're not moving in the right direction. Life is happening to them. They're not purposeful. And we've now seen the results for decades. Our own numbers say we're losing between 80 and 90% of our children. I'm not happy about that, and I hope you're not either. That's unacceptable. Our children, as the Bible says in Psalm 127, a couple key things here that will kind of lay the foundation for what I'm going to share. In verse 1, it says, "Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it." What does that mean? That means if you're not doing things God's way, it will not work, period. You can work hard, you can labor to build, I'm trying. If you're not doing it God's way, it will not work. And then down a little further, it says this, and those of you that are watching that have children, which hopefully are many of you, or the children themselves, listen to this. Children, this is who you are, and parents, this is what God has given you. It says, "Lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward." Arrows, as arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. So, for the foundation of what I'm talking about, you have to do things God's way, or I don't care how sincere, I don't care how emotional, how driven you are, you will fail. But we don't need to fail because we have a book that told us exactly how to do it God's way. And one other verse I want to read before I get into my talk is in Matthew 7, starting in verse 24. And it's Jesus himself talking. And if we choose not, and I read this to you because Jesus tells us what it's like. He said he's going to explain to us what it's like for those who listen to him and do it his way and let him build their house, and those that think they've got a better way of doing things or don't want to be on the out with the culture or something, so they're a little embarrassed, so they're going to do it a different, new, and strange way. Here's what he says himself. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine, so whoever is listening to them, and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man, which built his house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon the house. Do you all understand the rains are blowing, the winds are blowing, the rains are falling right now in America? That's what's happening. But what happens? And it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. What does a rock do? It stays put. It doesn't change. It doesn't blow with the wind. It does things the way we've always done things, and it sticks with the traditional way of doing things because it's anchored to a rock. But here's for those that you think you have a better idea, or maybe you've been trying a different idea and it hasn't worked. Here's why it hasn't worked. Because Jesus said, and everyone that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened unto a foolish man which built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. We have to do things God's way, or we're finished. There's a saying, and this is the title of my talk: the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Have you ever heard that? Do you believe it's true? It is true. Because God was so kind, he intended every man and woman, regardless of what they did for a living, it might be nothing, to have the most influential position on earth, where they were preparing their children to rule the world. They were the influencers that were creating the next generation that would decide how things were going to happen. So it didn't matter if you were a garbage man. If you did a good job with your family, you have had a very meaningful life, and a very powerful life, and a very influential life. And as I've studied the left now, since I was about 10 years old under my parents, and the socialism and the Marxism and the communism and all the people that think they have a better way of doing things than God does, I realize they do know that is a true quote. They know the hand that rocks the cradle will indeed rule the world. And that's why, and listen to me, that's why they are after your children. They want your children. They are after your children. Don't deceive yourself to think if you just keep doing things the way you're doing them, everything is going to magically work out. It will not. I promise you. The statistics show it, and reality shows it. As I've traveled this country, I've been in church after church after church, and I have heard sob story after sob story after sob story. Well, we thought if we were in church every time the doors were open, everything would be okay. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Parents, your job is to protect your children from deception. And let me tell you, if you're not aware, everything right now in our culture is deceptive. Everything. There's not a single thing that is straight shooting, honest, straightforward, saying here's the facts, and they're honest, and this is the way it is. Everything is a shade of deception. So if you are not prepared and you don't understand the times and you're not alert and watching and waiting and purposeful and prayerful, you're going to lose them. I promise you. I've had so many good friends that you would have said, boy, that's a nice Christian family. They've all lost their children. And I don't want that to happen to your children, and I don't want that to happen to mine. So we need to get back to the old ways and go, I think I'm going to let God build my house instead of doing it some clever new way. Now, I'm going to be talking a little bit about communism and Marxism, and that might to some of you watching go, what? What does that have to do with anything? Just hang with me and I will tell you what it does. This book right here was written in 1960. So it's been 60 years ago. And it was written by a man who was good friends of my father named Dr. Fred Schwartz. And it's called, interestingly enough, You Can Trust the Communist. I know that sounds funny. My dad made me read it when I was 10 years old because he said, you need to understand this group of people that are dead set on destroying everything America stands for, everything that the Bible has been about and is about, and you need to understand who they are so you're not deceived. Now, I'm going to just read you just a couple paragraphs, and again, stay with me. This is so important, but it will explain to you as parents how if you hit it right on 90% of the things, but you miss the 10%, your job has been in vain. And it's so interesting that the communist movement, which of course is just satanic, the way Dr. Schwartz talks about them helps you understand we need to trust when the Bible says in Ephesians 6, we are in a spiritual battle. This isn't a playground, it's a battlefield. So if your kids are on the playground, they're going to get shot and killed if they don't have on the full armor that we are told to put on. And so listen to this. It's amazing, the insight. This is from 60 years ago. And a lot of you also how this is relevant to today. You see on the news every night, our cities are being burned down. That's not spontaneous. It's not accidental. Those are Marxist groups that are always waiting in the wings to stir up rebellion, to try to achieve revolution, to destroy God's way of doing things in America. So America will collapse from within. The thesis of this book is very simple. It is that communists are communist. And I would say, add to that, evil is evil. Don't kid yourself. I intend to show you that they are exactly what they say they are. They believe exactly what they say they believe. Their objective is the objective they have repeatedly proclaimed to all the world. Their organization is the organization that they have described in minute detail. And their moral code is the one they have announced without shame. I mean, Lenin, over 100 years ago, said, we will take over Asia and through Latin America, and we will encircle the last bastion of capitalism, the United States of America, and they will fall like a ripe fruit into our hands. This is nothing new. This has been established over 100 years ago. But he goes on. Once we accept the fact that communists are communists and understand the laws of their thought and conduct, all the mystery disappears. And we are confronted with a movement which is frightening in its superb organization, strategic mobility, and universal program, but which is perfectly understandable and almost mathematically predictable. In the battle against communism, and this relates to you parents, listen carefully, there is no substitute for accurate, specific knowledge. Ignorance is evil and paralytic. The best intentions, I don't care how well-meaning you are, parents, if they're allied with the most, and you have sincere motives, they're going to be ineffective and futile if they're divorced from adequate knowledge. Now listen to this. He gives an example of being a parent. And so you will understand what I am talking about. And everything I just read is exactly what God has done for us in the Bible. He said, I want to tell you the things that are evil, so you're aware of them. I want to tell you the strategies of the devil in getting your children and trying to influence you and tempt you into things. I want to tell you about these things so you won't be blind to them. Well, here's what Dr. Schwartz says for you parents. Consider a mother who has a small daughter whom she is devoted. For this daughter, she is determined to do all that a mother may do. She feeds her a well-balanced diet to build a healthy body. She provides the finest education to develop her mind. She cares for her spiritual well-being and gives her a lovely home. In the environment of this little girl, there are men who specialize in gaining the confidence of little girls. by giving them candy and enticing them into automobiles to molest them. If the mother neglects to give her child the specific information to meet such a situation, she will fail in her duty, and all her loving care will count for nothing when the crisis comes. There is no substitute for specific knowledge. Everything is after your children. I'll just make that clear. I'm going to go through as many areas as I have time to go through, just to show you, give you a sampling of the ways you need to be thoughtful, purposeful, protective, because, again, it's never going to just accidentally turn out all right. We are under the illusion that it will, but by the time you recognize it's not going to work out, it's too late. This life is a vapor. You only have so much time, and when you awake and realize, I lost my children, I lost my country, it's too late. You can't go back 1 minute in time, 1 day in time, and that's why today is so important, and us using our time wisely is so important. What have they done in education, which is one of the main focuses of this? K through 12. Of course, it's a purposeful indoctrination. This is not an accident. Just a brief overview of that to let you know. John Dewey, who is the father of our government schools and still revered as, oh, what a wonderful man. He went over to the Soviet Union back in the 20s to see how they did their educational system. Why? Because he was a founding member of the Socialist Society in America, and he was a founding member of the ACLU, which at that time, the ACLU had their headquarters inside the Communist Party USA building in New York. I mean, that's where he was coming from. And he realized if we are to propagandize the children, I must make sure we implement one of Marx's philosophies. We need to age segregate, peer group the children, so they are not being influenced by anyone except people that are exactly their age, who are just as ignorant as they are. And so why? So we will be the only influencers. And so we're going to divide them apart by doing that. He said, John Dewey, he said, we need to train the children so they will be cogs in the socialist machine. Well, when you're a cog in a machine, something has to have been dumbed out of you or beaten out of you if you're going to be content to just sit there your whole life and do some monotonous thing like that. God did not create us to do that. And so I just tell you that because that's where they're coming from. I also read to you, this is a list of goals from the Communist Party from the 1950s. Okay, so it was read into the congressional record in 1963. So no hidden secrets here. Goal number 17, get control of the schools and use them as transmission belts for socialism, soften the curriculum. You wonder why. Every program that's passed, every new thing that's supposed to help the schools makes them get worse and worse. It's intentional. We know how to give someone a good education. For hundreds of years, we know, in logic and reason and reading and understanding and morality and character and virtue. We know how to do that. Don't think we haven't figured that out. They're wanting to make sure none of that stuff happens. And that's why it's not happening. It's not an accident. It's purposeful. They even knew just having Christianity there was a problem. Goal 28, 1958, goal number 28, eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression in the schools on the grounds that it violates the principles of separation of church and state. They knew the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Higher education. I remember back in the 80s reading a survey of Midwestern colleges, okay? And the college professors had a choice. They could choose different ideologies to align themselves with. They could say, I'm a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Socialist, Marxist, all these different choices. 65% of them said we are Marxist. They didn't say Democrats, we are Marxists. That's in the 1980s, okay? And it's gone so far beyond that. Harvard University, just a few weeks ago, had a survey of 500 of their college professors. And they asked them the question, how many of you would consider yourself conservative? And of 500 college professors, 5 said they would consider themselves conservative. The other 495 probably would have classified themselves as Marxist. And you think your kid going there, it's going to be okay. Again, the last survey I saw, I believe it was from Barna about a year or so ago, of kids that are raised in a Christian family, we are losing, of the millennial generation, we're losing 91% of them within 1 semester of college. That's how well we've prepared them for the battleground that we are sending them into. We've got to do things different, parents. We have to. Another thing coming at our young ladies is the feminist movement. Well, who started the feminist movement? A lady named Betty Friedan. And she wrote a book back in the 60s called Feminine Mystique. And it showed ladies, hey, the home, as she said, quote, is a comfortable concentration camp. Don't stand for that anymore. Why don't you go out in the world and do something meaningful, like get a job for a man out there? It's crazy. And the reason they tried to convince women to leave that position and to belittle it and cut it down is they knew it was the most powerful position in the world. Ladies, what you are doing is the most powerful, influential thing that is going on the entire earth. A president maybe has tremendous influence for 4 or 8 years, and then it's gone. Most of what Ronald Reagan did that was great when I was growing up, it was gone within a term of a Democrat, and his influence, it was gone. You ladies, as the generations unfold and there's more children and then more grandchildren and more great-grandchildren, you will have 1,000 times, and you fathers too, this is your role to raise those children. You will have 1,000 times the influence than you do right now 100 years from now. That's the way it's supposed to be, because we're supposed to be multi-generationally faithful to upholding the biblical principles and passing them down, and that's the greatest way we can fulfill the commandment to love our neighbor. And we have to do that. But Betty Friedan, of course, had to lie to the women. And later it came out, when she wrote the book, she said she was just a housewife, miserable housewife, and just, concerned for women. We later found out, no, she's a communist, and she loves Stalin, who had slaughtered 20 to 40 million of the Russian people, and it was all a lie. It was just a tool to destroy us from within. Goal number 40 fits right in with that. Discredit the family as an institution, encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. I can go then into music and film. I've seen music probably do more damage to our country than almost anything, because it creates a spirit of rebellion. And when people are rebellious, they're very easy to manipulate, very easy. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones, both of those were communist groups. You can find articles where Lenin himself of the Beatles was interviewed by the Red Soviet papers back in the 70s, and he said, we're working toward the revolution by destroying the morality in America. They knew what they were doing, okay? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll destroys, and that was their goal. Film. A film in 90 minutes can take a young person or an older person that is a moral person and convince them that immorality is the way to go, that God is not God, and there are no consequences for sin, and they are deadly. Here's how we are so naive. That's our main problem, I guess. Because we think everybody thinks like we do, so we think, why would anyone want to destroy the children? Well, who would want to do that? Well, you're naive. Man is so evil, it's hard to comprehend. Here's a quote from Wilhelm Reich of the Frankfurt School. This is from 1930s America, 90 years ago. And I just tell you this so you understand our enemy knows what made America great, knows what makes a strong family, knows what makes things prosperous, and they're going to destroy every single one of those. Listen to this. This is how they have turned your children against God. We as communists used to debate people about the existence of God. And after a while, I came to the conclusion that this was a waste of time. You aren't going to debate people away from the existence of God. But what we found was that if we can get people, especially young people, involved in deviant sexual behavior, the whole idea of God just disappears automatically. Do you understand what that's saying? It's saying we realize, listen, if we can get them sinning so much, they don't want there to be you don't want there to be a God when you're being immoral and doing what's wrong, because you don't want your conscience to be bugging you and tormenting you. And so they knew, hey, we're just pushing immorality, get sex education in the schools, get those parents away from those children so they can't influence them. We're going to teach them, if it feels good, do it. And God's going to disappear from the culture because they won't want him to be there. And that's what they've done. And showing how clever they are. Listen to some of these because it's so important. Goal 24, again, 1950s America. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship and a violation of free speech and free press. I don't think you know how far we've come. Everybody knows we've come a distance, but they don't understand. Let me tell you a little story. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, so it had been early 70s, my mother and I went to the store, Ma's Brothers in Tampa, Florida, where we lived. Well, she had to buy, this story tells so many levels of how we've changed. My mom needed to purchase some feminine things, and back then, it would have been totally inappropriate to take a young man into the ladies section of a department store. So she said, Curtis, you wait right out here, outside the door here, and I'll be right back out. I said, yes, ma'am. And while I was standing there at 7 or 8 years old, and I'll never forget it because I was scared to death, on the other side of the doorway, there was a man that was covered with tattoos head to toe. And that was very unusual back then. And he was just a rough character. And he was talking to a gentleman next to him. I'm just standing there waiting for my mother. While he was talking to the gentleman, he used the word hell. And a lot of people say, so? Well, this is how much we have changed. After a couple minutes, he noticed me there, and he came over to me. And I still can picture his face because he knelt down right in my face, and he said this, son, I'm so sorry for saying that. I didn't see you standing there. That's how much we've changed. We have become obscene and vile and pornographic, and we don't even realize it. In the 70s even, there was so much Christian fabric. A guy that did talk like that, he knew you don't talk like that in front of a child or a lady. You don't do those things because they're wrong. Goal 25, break down the cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. We live in a pornographic society. I can't even take I have 6 sons, and I can't even take them to Walmart because of the women's magazines sitting there right in their face level when I go there. The cover of any of those women's magazines today in 1958 would have been XXX pornography, and you would have literally gone to jail if you tried to distribute it. That's how far we've come. And we think everything's going to be all right. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Goal 26, present homosexuality as normal, natural, healthy. How did they know that's going to start to unwind a culture and it's going to start breaking down marriage and it's going to start devaluing the family? They just know. Because their commander-in-chief is Satan, and he knows exactly how God designed everything to be, and he's not stopping until everything has been turned on its head. And that's what we're up against. So if you think playing footsies with the world is going to be okay, I'm here to tell you you're wrong. And I'm sorry to be that direct, but I've seen too many heartbreaks. I've had too many parents come to me with tears running down their face and telling me their sob stories. I don't want it to happen to you, and it doesn't have to happen to you. But you have to change what you are doing and get on the train that's going in the right direction, and where you have a vision for the future and you're inspiring your children to know, hey, no, that's where we're going. Well, mommy and daddy, everybody else is going there. I know, but that's not where we're going. We're going right there. And you have to train your children to go right there, and their children right there. We want to be faithful unto the end, and it's not going to happen by accident. The churches, our youth groups, one of the goals was infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with social religion and discredit the Bible. Well, I don't even know what to say. I've been in the evangelical church my entire life. I was 7 days old when I attended my first service with my parents and have been there every Sunday since. And I've seen the change and the progress. It's not progress. We've descended into a church that is so pathetic and makes a lost man feel so welcome in a way that he is comfortable there. Of course they're welcome, but they should know I'm missing something. And they should be preaching that convicts and admonishes and makes them ashamed of their sin. You can never get saved if you're not ashamed of your sin. You're lost you're going to go to bust hell wide open. And so if you love them, you have to speak the truth. Of course, lovingly. But we keep the standards up. We don't lower them. So, well, we want everyone to feel comfortable. No, we want everyone to feel welcome. But my pastor's job is to feed the sheep. It's not to worry about the lost man. You know what happens when you feed the sheep? When that pastor is mainly even preaching just to the fathers, so they will lead their sheep individually. You know what happens? Then those sheep are so strong and healthy and motivated, they are sharing the gospel wherever they go. And all of a sudden, the Great Commission is happening, but the church is focused on training and building and informing the sheep and protecting them. And if a lost man comes in, he's going to be so attracted to the fact that these families are different. Why are they different? Everywhere I go, my family is so far from perfect, it's not even funny. But everywhere I go, it's like, we'll be eating at Cracker Barrel. They come over and the waitress, is this a family? Your kids are so nice. And I go, not all the time. And they go on and on. And I'm like, kids, do you see when you just try to do it God's way? It's a light that is so bright in the darkness, you can tell them. And we tell every one of those waitresses, it's about Jesus. Anything different, if there is anything, it's because of him. Here's a tract that tells you who he is and what he did for you. He loves you and he died for you. And it makes him look good. Our only point on this earth, people, listen to me, children listening, your only point is to make Jesus look good. That's it. It's to glorify him, and the way you glorify him is you obey him. That's the entire Christian life summed up. But of course, my time is almost up. Fashion, culture, every social media, which is going to be talked about. Satan knows this. He knows what God said is true. Life is a vapor. And so when he knows once you're saved and he's not going to be able to get you, and maybe he can't even pull you into deviant sexual behavior, he knows this. I just got to waste their time. So the time they've been given to do what God wants them to do, they'll use it up texting or Facebooking or whatever. He doesn't care what you're doing. It doesn't have to be bad. He just wants to use up your most precious resource, which is your time. And yet we never know how much is left. Use it wisely, because I'm telling you, if you're a Christian, you will give an account. And because we are supposed to be stewarding that for him. I'm going to talk about one more area and then wrap up, because this area even impressed me. The culture. Here's one area of culture that even back in the 1950s, they're like, we got to subvert, pervert, and destroy it. Here's what it is. Listen to this goal, and then we'll talk about how America has changed in this area. Goal number 22, continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. Eliminate all good sculpture from parks and buildings and substitute shapeless, awkward, meaningless forms. They weren't going to let anything escape. You say, well, what's the point of that? Well, tell me if you haven't noticed in your parks and cities and towns all over America, anything new almost anywhere that has gone up in the last 50 years, 40 years since the 70s is twisted metal. It's like something you go, what's that? Was there an accident or something? And we're supposed to sit there. But here's the strategy of that. It is important. Everything is important because God is the Lord. Jesus is the Lord of everything. When you can so twist someone's viewpoint that they can't tell the difference between beauty and ugliness, purposefulness and just disaster, you're confusing them. Where they start to lose it. And you start to lose all definitions of morality, all definitions of truth, all definitions of things that are absolute, and it is so destructive. And I remember when I first read that goal, I said, that is unbelievable. Satan knew art was for one purpose only. I will tell you how you can tell if something's art. There's only one way. It is man, whether it's sculpting, painting, whatever it is man in his own way trying to imitate the Creator. He is duplicating something that the Creator has already done. If he's trying to come up with his own whatever, it is ugliness, it's meaningless, and it's exactly what they wanted. We are supposed to reflect the Creator. If we're artists, we're supposed to paint landscapes or people or things that God made and do our best to duplicate them accurately to just show how what he did was perfect. And so if you want good art, I want to duplicate him because he was perfect. And I want to get as close to him as possible in the way I do it. And maybe I do it in an impressionist style, like Monet or something, but I'm going to show, it's going to be beautiful because he is beautiful. It's going to be purposeful because he is purposeful. It's going to be clear design and order to it. Anything that is disorderly is no good because our Creator is a God of order. Of course, the news media is so powerful because when you control information, you control people. How do you make decisions in life? By gathering information and then making a decision on that. That's why they've been so after media for 100 years, because if you control what people are hearing, then you're going to control what they're going to do by limiting them from access to whatever you don't want them to hear. And that's what's happened. But I tell you this, the family. As you look around at America, I know it can be depressing, discouraging, but the family itself, if we are faithful in that and have no even influence outside of that, if we're just, I don't know many people, that's okay. You be faithful with that one child or two or three or four, however many God has given you. You be faithful to prepare them, to love them, to nurture them, to admonish them, and to prepare them for the battle they are entering. You'll be so glad you did. And that is the single greatest thing you can do for our country as well. We've seen from the CHOP zone in Seattle, the left to themselves self-destruct. They have not the character, the virtue, the morality to even survive. And so we need to, like the Bible says, be separate, be separate. And we're supposed to be out and building the next generation. And by doing that, again, we'll have more opportunities to engage the other side, especially for those that are looking for something different, those that see, man, the way we've been doing things just doesn't work. And I encourage you to do that. I know all these talks tonight and tomorrow are going to be a blessing. Get copies of them, watch them over again, take notes, and set a new course for your family. Make a decision. I heard a talk in 1999, 21 years ago, a 1-hour talk by a man that said, you need to have a vision for your family. And in that 1 hour talk, my entire life changed. I caught his vision. That's what we're trying to do in this conference, to catch a vision, to go, we're doing things different. The way we've been doing it doesn't work, and only a fool keeps doing what doesn't work, expecting it at some point to start working. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, those of you that are here. And just be prayerful, be purposeful, and God is with us, and he will direct our path if we ask him to, and if we're acknowledging him in all that we do, like Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says. But thank you so much. I appreciate it.
There's nothing in this world more precious than a child. We treasure the immeasurable value and undeserved gift of children. God calls on all of us to protect the minds of our children from those who regard them as commodities. Marxist indoctrination, sex trafficking, and the enticement of the pop culture industry are crimes being committed against our children even as we speak. And that's why we are here. Would you join us in an effort to rescue them? Text the word rescuing to 50155 to donate any amount. Thank you.